with a sort of overview of what was done on blue zone research, and especially in Sardinia, so the island where I was born and I live. So the discovery of population characterized by a very high number of long-lived individuals date back to more than 20 years ago. This is the story of the blue zone. When during a meeting in France in October 1999, I presented for the first time data suggesting the existence of a huge number of centenarians in a relatively small central area of Sardinia that you know it is in the Mediterranean, and where the probability of reaching 100 years of age was demonstrably higher than in the rest of the island. And the name of blue zone, so the blue color, comes from the fact that this was the color that we used to draw the first geographical maps of the longevity area. And in the early years, let's say from 2000 and 2016, there were several studies on longevity in Sardinia. For example, in 2002, the ACHEA study, which was directed by Italian demographers, studied the prevalence of centenarian all over the island. And this was the first study that, let's say, established a high prevalence of centenarian in Sardinia. But later, in 2004, in collaboration with Michel Poulain, we found strong arguments to the fact that in longevity in Sardinia was restricted to this area, so not widespread, but only in the mountain central area of Sardinia. This was the beginning of the story. Only in 2016, after the creation of the Blue Zone Observatory, it was possible to start the first survey investigating the, let's say, the lifestyle and the clinical features of Sardinian centenarians. I mentioned the ACHEA study in 2002. This study is now almost forgotten, but in my opinion, it was useful because the parental transmission of longevity was analyzed in this study, and they came to the conclusion that neither paternal nor maternal age had a significant impact on the probability of becoming centenarians. So this was the first hint that in Sardinia the role of genetic factors was probably less important than non-genetic factors. In any case, the term blue zone was first used in an article published in 2004, published in Experimental Gerontology journal, but in the following years, the term was extended to other longevity hotspots progressively discovered in the world. I mean the Nicoya Peninsula in Central America, in Costa Rica, the Icaria Island in Greece, and of course Okinawa was already known as a longevity island. It was only included in the list of official blue zone. Most of this population are isolated populations, so they are remarkably more homogeneous from the genetic point of view and also for lifestyle. And I think that the study of blue zone can make it easier to get better insight into the longevity determinants. I think that the blue zone research may be a promising tool to test several hypotheses as for the importance of longevity promoting factors. What are the factors mainly involved? I already mentioned longevity factors. You know that longevity is often assumed to be transmitted through generation, and the early studies estimated at nearly 25% the impact of the genes on the lifespan variability. More recently, you know that the studies on big digital family trees have established that probably only from 10 to 16% of the lifespan variabilities is due to genetic factors. This probably explains why genome-wide association studies had limited success in discovering genetic variants associated with longevity. Two genes were consistently associated with longevity in several populations. I mean the FOXO3A and the ApoE gene, both of which are involved in oxidative stress, in protection against oxidative stress, in inflammation, apoptosis, and autophagy. So they have been studied also in the Sardinian blue zone, not all the, in all the blue zone, sorry, not only in Sardinia. We know that in Okinawa there is a FOXO3A polymorphism, and more particularly the TT genotype, which is harmful for longevity and was demonstrably associated with longevity. We did the same research in Sardinia and Icaria, and in fact we found a slight reduction of the frequency of the harmful genotype, but without statistical significance, and this was interpreted as due to the small size of this population, and especially in Sardinia, to homogeneity due to endogamy and the genetic drift, essentially. The other longevity-associated gene, ApoE, was studied in Sardinia and in Icaria, and again we found a reduction of the frequency of the epsilon-4 allele, which is considered harmful for longevity, but without statistical significance. This is a big problem in blue zone research. Some of these populations are very small. For example, the population in Icaria is only 8,000 people, so sometimes you lack statistical power. Epigenetic studies are probably more promising. We have seen in the previous presentation that now it is possible to study the methylation, and through the methylation clocks we can measure the effect of several lifetime exposure to these biological markers, and in some way we can estimate the level of biological age. Such studies are ongoing in some of the blue zone, and some results have already been published. For example, in the Nicoya blue zone, a lower variability of the methylation was found in Nicoyans compared with the rest of Costa Ricans, with the rest of the people in the country, suggesting a younger biological profile. However, in Sardinia and Icaria, the epigenetic studies was disappointing because we expected to find the absence of the gender gap, for example, because you know, in Sardinia, men live as long as women. So there is, it is probably the only blue zone with a sort of equalitarian longevity. And so we expected to find the absence of a gap also in the epigenetic study. We didn't find this, so from the epigenetic point of view, there is the difference between men and women that we have observed elsewhere. So this is the situation. Probably listen to the presentation of Steve Horvath. We have to change the type of clock. We have to use a different tool to explore this this complexity. I come quickly to dietary factors that are considered to have an impact on longevity. The characteristic of diet in the blue zone has been the subject of a recent publication. So today I want only to approach the problem of calorie restriction. You know that in animal models, calorie restriction was demonstrated to be able to extend the lifespan. For the blue zone, we can say that only Okinawa, so only for Okinawa, where the daily calorie intake was estimated to be less than 2,000 kilocalories, is really important, probably also in the Icaria island, but for Sardinia, there are no strong evidences for calorie restriction. There are old data published before the World War II pointing to a daily calorie intake between 2,400 and 2,600, so probably questioning the existence of a true calorie restriction. And for Nicoya, definitely the daily calorie intake was higher than in the rest of Costa Rica. So no evidence for calorie restriction. In any case, the obesity rate in each of the 4 blue zones, of the official blue zone, is lower than the reference population. So in Okinawa is lower than in the rest of Japan, Sardinia compared to Italy, Nicoya compared to Costa Rica, and Icaria compared to Greece. 2 of the blue zone, I mean Sardinia and Icaria, are located in the Mediterranean area. So this has suggested the idea that the Mediterranean diet could have an impact on the longevity. In both islands, there are a lot of low sugar foods, and in Sardinia especially the locally produced naturally fermented bread, the sourdough bread, and we have analyzed, we have tested the effect of the sourdough bread in Sardinia against the bread leavened with baker's yeast, and we have found what I consider an interesting result in an acute experiment. So administering the sourdough bread, we noticed a reduction of blood sugar by 25%. That disappear, of course, after 2 hours. And also a reduction by 25% of insulin level. So this potentially may indicate the ability of this kind of bread to prevent the onset of metabolic disease and diabetes. I don't have a chronic data, so long-term data, so I cannot say for sure that this is true. And Recently, we have analyzed the fatty acid profile in Sardinian centenarians, and we have found that CLA is conjugated linoleic acid, the circulating level were higher in people coming from the blue zone, older people coming from the blue zone, compared to younger people from the blue zone and older people outside the blue zone, so in the north of the island. And this was really interesting because conjugated linoleic acid is found in dairy products. So our first hypothesis was that this was due to the high intake of dairy products in Sardinia. You know, most of people living in the blue zone are shepherds, so they practice shepherdry and they consume a lot of dairy products, milk and cheese, especially goat cheese. And we know that CLA has anti-inflammatory and anti-cancer properties. So this was a good idea. And also we know that conjugated linoleic acid is a potent activator of Sirtuin. Okay, we have to replicate the study, but if this is true, it means that conjugated linoleic acid may act as a calorie restriction and also as several polyphenols, for example, resveratrol that is found in red wine, that are also able to activate Sirtuin, and through this mechanism can reduce apoptosis and increase autophagy, both situation conducive to longevity. Some of the studies conducted mostly in Sardinia were based on a geospatial approach, taking the advantage of the fact that many variables in Sardinia, for example, are available at municipality level. In Sardinia, there are 377 municipalities, and some variables are available for all municipalities. So the geospatial approach, I think it's really useful, and through this approach we were able to analyze the effect of physical activity. In an ecological studies, we found an association between longevity and some variables considered linked to physical activity. For example, the main occupation, because, okay, shepherd did a lot of physical activity, but also the daily distance to reach the workplace when it is outside the village, and also the steepness of the terrain. So the hypothesis was that walking on a steep terrain implied a higher energy expenditure than walking on flat ground. Associations with physical activity, statistically significant. More recently, we're also able to analyze physical activity individually in a cohort of free-living nonagenarian from the Sardinian Blue Zone using wearable devices. They are essentially the accelerometers, not very sophisticated, but anyway, able to measure energy expenditure. And we found that moderate activity, physical activity superior to 3 MET, metabolic equivalent, which is considered a good level of physical activity, were detected in more than 40% of nonagenarians, which is one of the highest percentage recorded in nonagenarian cohort. And also in other blue zone, for example, in Icaria, only 12% of men and 18% of women fall in the range of low physical activity, quindi against physical activity, and also in Nicoya, the male population was very active. We can say that a high level of physical activity is common to all blue zone. I can say this is true also for Okinawa. So this may be one of the important factors. So, in conclusion, despite many differences between the blue zone, differences related to historical, anthropological, and also environmental factors, their longevity is due to a concurrence of factors, and also probably to the fact of a slower economic development, which promoted the persistence of the ancient tradition, including the dietary habits. I don't know if in the future the blue zone will last, but as far as they exist, I think they are, at least for me, a fascinating field of research. I would like to end my presentation mentioning my mother, who was born in 1925, and she is still alive at the age of nearly 98, and I have to thank her for giving me a lot of good advices, and it is, for me, the best example of successful aging. Thank you for your attention.